China. Vast, ancient, and deeply complex. Today it stands as the third largest nation on Earth. But its size has long stirred debate and controversy. The borders of the modern People's Republic of China stretch far beyond the heartlands of the Han Chinese, embracing regions home to the Tibetans, Uyghurs, and Mongolians, peoples with their own histories, faiths, and languages. For centuries, these minorities have fought to preserve their unique identities amid growing pressure to conform to the dominant Han culture. Yet one question lingers through centuries of conquest and diplomacy. How did these distant peoples become part of China in the first place?
If the 19th century is remembered as China's century of humiliation, when foreign powers carved away its sovereignty, then the 18th century could be called its century of expansion. At a time when European empires sailed across oceans to seize new worlds, China's emperors on the dragon throne turned their gaze inland. Under their banners, armies marched to the outer edges of Asia, extending imperial rule into the wind-swept steppes of Mongolia, the high monasteries of Tibet, and the desert oases of East Turkestan, modern Xinjiang. But this rise was not born overnight. For millennia, the Chinese world had been defined by the rhythms of the Yellow River, the cradle of civilization from which Chinese culture radiated outward. As kingdoms rose and fell, waves of neighboring tribes were gradually absorbed through trade, migration, and war into the Han cultural sphere. Yet this expansion reached a natural boundary, the arid steppes and deserts of Inner Asia, where settled farmers met the nomadic horsemen of legend.
To the Chinese dynasties, these lands beyond the Great Wall were a constant threat, home to the mounted warriors who raided, traded, and at times conquered the Middle Kingdom itself. The Great Wall, after all, was more than stone and earth. It was a line between worlds, the agrarian heart of China and the untamed frontier of the nomads. For centuries, Chinese rulers sought to hold back these barbarians through walls, diplomacy, and tribute, rarely through lasting conquest. But by the dawn of the 17th century, a new force from beyond the wall was rising, one that would not only master the nomads, but unify them. A people who, against all odds, would conquer China itself. Out of the icy forests of Manchuria, a new dynasty was born, one that would reshape China's destiny and redraw the map of Asia. From the cold forests of Manchuria, beyond the Great Wall, came a people who would transform China forever, the Manchus. Fierce, disciplined, and skilled in mounted warfare, they were heirs to centuries of frontier struggle between China and the northern tribes. Though not nomads themselves, the Manchus shared many of the qualities that had long defined the great steppe powers: unity, adaptability, and the will to conquer.
Their story began with Nurhaci, a chieftain of the Aisin Joro clan, who, in 1616, united the fractious Jurchen tribes under a single banner. In doing so, he gave them a new name, the Manchus. Armed with the powerful organization of the 8 banners, an elite corps of soldiers who lived and fought together as a single organism, Nurhaci and his successors forged a state that could rival the Ming Empire to the south. As the Ming Dynasty faltered under famine, rebellion, and disease, the Manchus struck. Their cavalry thundered through the mountain passes, seizing Beijing in 1644, and within decades, they had subdued the vast expanse of the Chinese heartland. Thus was born the Qing Dynasty, China's final imperial house. But the Manchu emperors did not stop at ruling China. They dreamed of empire. By the 18th century, their dominion stretched far beyond the agrarian plains, over Mongolia, Tibet, Xinjiang, and beyond.
The Qing realm was nearly 3 times the size of Ming China, encompassing deserts, mountains, and grasslands that had never before bowed to a single Chinese throne. Why did this dynasty, unlike those before it, seek expansion rather than defense? The answer was simple: security. The northern frontiers were still restless, home to many Mongol tribes who longed to rebuild the empire of Genghis Khan. To the Qing, these nomads were a lingering threat. To survive, they had to be conquered or unified under the Manchu banner. Where the Ming emperors had built walls, the Qing emperors built alliances and launched campaigns. Their approach was both military and diplomatic, a blend of the sword and the marriage bond. The Mongols would not be destroyed, they would be absorbed. By wielding both force and persuasion, the Manchus began their long campaign to bring Inner Asia under Qing rule, a process that would take decades and change the fate of every people it touched. To control the steppes, the Qing would first have to confront the fiercest horsemen of them all, the Mongols, and the battle for Mongolia would decide the future of China's empire. For centuries, the Mongols had haunted China's dreams, a memory of fire and conquest that stretched back to Genghis Khan. Though the great Mongol Empire had long dissolved, its fragments remained. Fierce, independent tribes scattered across the endless grasslands of Inner and Outer Mongolia. The Manchus knew that peace in China could never last while these steppe horsemen remained divided, yet unbound. The first challenge came from Ligdan Khan, a southern Mongol ruler who sought to rebuild the Mongol Empire. His ambitions threatened both Manchu and Mongol neighbors alike. During the 1620s, Nurhaci and his successor Hong Taiji fought a relentless war against Ligdan's forces, uniting southern Mongol clans under the Qing banner. By 1634, Ligdan was defeated, and the Manchu emperor was recognized as the rightful sovereign of the southern steppes, the first step in bringing Mongolia under imperial rule. But the greater challenge was yet to come. In the west, the Dzungar Khanate, a powerful confederation of Irat Mongols, rose under their dynamic leader Galdan Boshogtu Khan. A brilliant tactician and devout Buddhist, Galdan sought to unite all Mongols under his rule, an ambition blessed by none other than the Dalai Lama of Tibet. Backed by divine authority, Galdan expanded his domain across Central Asia, conquering the Tarim Basin and subduing the Uyghur oasis cities. By the 1680s, his expansion brought him face to face with the Qing Empire. The resulting conflict would last a decade, a brutal war of attrition fought across deserts, rivers, and frozen plains. Emperor Kangxi, the longest reigning ruler in Chinese history, personally led his armies to victory. In 1696, Galdan was crushed, his forces scattered. By the dawn of the 18th century, both Inner and Outer Mongolia had sworn fealty to the Qing throne. Yet this victory was not won by force alone. The Qing understood the Mongols, their clan loyalties, their religion, their pride. They integrated Mongol nobles into the Qing elite, arranged intermarriages, and recruited Mongol warriors into the Eight Banners army. In doing so, they turned former enemies into allies and erased the line between conqueror and conquered. Through war and diplomacy, the Qing achieved what no dynasty before them could, the complete pacification of the Mongol world. Beyond the Mongol steppe lay the roof of the world, Tibet, and the Qing's ambitions were far from satisfied. What began as politics among monks and khans would soon draw the empire into a holy war for the soul of Inner Asia. High above the clouds, where mountains pierced the sky, lay Tibet, a land of faith and mysticism, ruled by monks and guided by the Dalai Lama.
Since the 1600s, Tibet had been under the loose protection of the Koshut Khanate, another Mongol polity tied by blood and faith to the Buddhist world. Yet by the early 18th century, the balance of power in Inner Asia was shifting once more. The Dzungars, triumphant in Central Asia, now set their sights on Tibet. Their leader's alliance with the Dalai Lama posed a direct threat to Qing authority, for whoever controlled the Dalai Lama controlled the spiritual allegiance of millions of Mongol Buddhists. When the Dzungars invaded Tibet in 1717, overthrowing the Koshut rulers and seizing Lhasa, the Qing emperor found his opportunity. In a campaign lasting several years, Qing forces expelled the Dzungars and installed their own protectorate over Tibet. By 1724, Tibet was under Qing political dominance. Its government reorganized, but its religious hierarchy left intact. The Dalai Lama would continue to rule, but now under the watchful eye of imperial envoys from Beijing. Meanwhile, in the far west, the once mighty Dzungar Khanate began to collapse from within. After the death of Galdan Ring in 1745, civil war tore through the Oirat Mongols. Sensing weakness, Emperor Qianlong struck decisively. In 1755, Qing armies, joined by defecting Mongol and Uyghur allies, invaded Dzungaria. Within 3 years, the Khanate was annihilated. Its territories were reorganized into a new province, Xinjiang, meaning New Frontier. Yet the conquest was not without horror. Determined to prevent any Dzungar revival, Qianlong unleashed a campaign of mass extermination. Tens of thousands were slaughtered, disease and famine finished the rest. Historians estimate that nearly 70% of the Dzungar population perished, one of the darkest chapters in Qing history. From the Tibetan Plateau to the deserts of East Turkestan, the Qing Empire now stretched further than ever before. Its reach spanned mountains, grasslands, and oases, a multi-ethnic empire united under one throne. By the mid-18th century, the Qing Empire stood at its height, a colossal realm built not merely by conquest, but by an extraordinary system of governance and cultural diplomacy. Within its borders lived dozens of peoples: Han Chinese, Mongols, Tibetans, Uyghurs, and Manchus, each bound to the throne by a delicate balance of autonomy and loyalty. To preserve stability, the Qing developed a dual administrative system. The Han heartland was ruled directly through a centralized bureaucracy, while the frontier regions were governed indirectly through local leaders, Mongol princes, Uyghur beys, and the Dalai Lama himself, now under Qing supervision. The empire's Lifan Yuan, a special administrative body, acted as the bridge between Beijing and these outer territories. Unlike previous dynasties, the Manchu rulers did not force uniformity. They presented themselves differently to different peoples. Confucian emperors to the Han, divine bodhisattvas to the Tibetans, and great Khans to the Mongols. This cultural flexibility allowed the Qing to maintain peace across vast distances. Yet over time, the ruling Manchu elite became increasingly Sinicized, adopting Han customs and language until they were nearly indistinguishable from the people they once ruled. Still, the empire's balance was fragile. By the late 18th century, population growth, famine, and land scarcity drove millions of Han Chinese settlers into the frontier regions, despite official bans. The result was profound demographic change. The heartlands of the Manchus, Mongols, and Uyghurs slowly transformed into Han majority areas. The cultural equilibrium the Qing had built began to erode. By the 19th century, the empire's strength had faded. Corruption, rebellion, and foreign imperialism pushed the Qing toward collapse. When the dynasty finally fell in 1911, its vast territories did not vanish. They were inherited by the modern Chinese state. Some lands, like Outer Mongolia, slipped away under Soviet influence, but Tibet, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia remained under Chinese control. Empires may fall, but their borders and the tensions they create often outlive them. The story of China's frontier is far from over.